You did us a solid by bringing Kathy. Let's see.
Yeah, but it was an incredible paper. Not that this is
I think that was a very smart call, but we'll see when we get here.
Do you think it's rolled to the right place?
I do. No, I know it is because we have Pilch, which we used this morning for shelter. So it's definitely the right place as long as we have that door. Oh, they didn't put both in here though. I'm glad you got.
Oh yeah.
No, but they used it for vacation this morning. They used Boulder for vacation.
I'm wearing masks.
Okay.
It's more than like 2 months. Yeah. I'd be amazed if this. I've been in sport class. That's pretty good.
Well, we had an excellent turnout for the bar mitzvah. Yeah, the family is loved in a lot of communities, so we had quite the turnout.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and they told me that the mini Minha this morning, which is for our kindergarten through second grade, they had 80 RSVPs and 80 families RSVP'd, and nearly as many showed up. So
Yeah. Yeah, bar mitzvah will always do it. You know, there's only once every 30 years.
I know, even at Torah or at the returning, yeah, we cut out our whole signal. Yeah. They recorded. Yeah, they recorded. So they're able to recover a lot of Yeah, they apparently Hector posted a new on our website that people were able to. I don't know. He said that other people were joining on the link, but it may have taken a while.
It kept it cut out over to now. I went back, and it seemed to be in the middle, and then to shock read, and I thought you, and then listening, and I thought, oh, loose off.
Whoa,
Hey,
go in.
and then all of a sudden, you can't drive in. I was like, no, what?
I was gonna bring my book of friend guy. He's an ex-Catholic priest. Picture.
I don't know if it was the whole area. I don't know if it was just
I think you come close to me. 6 of us already.
Bob's girlfriend is here, so she made 7. We already have 7.
that bodes well.
I have now.
Put it on the internet.
No egg salad, but 2 white fish.
She published his
The
memoir.
white fish. Whitefish for the past 15 minutes. 2 tubs of whitefish.
I love whitefish salad.
Elon Spot is the person I've never met. And his father at the minute.
I'll use it to up my honorarium.
My mother, Zichron Livracha, could take a whitefish, fillet it, and then hold up the bone. She was able, It was unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, she
I
can do
did not
that.
learn that skill.
That is a trick.
But
That is
not
a trick.
When she filleted the whitefish, there were no bones.
I do
And
love that.
I always hated it because there were
But the
bones.
trick,
Love that
Exactly.
talent.
the trick is to cut along the,
Spine.
The spine.
no, not the back, along the line, about inch and a
Oh,
half
I see,
below.
I sense an expert. One knows what he's doing.
Well, I'm an expert. But
All I
you know,
know
the
is-
fish, you gotta cut along
Or
that
if they're gonna get
line
something,
below the
you're
back.
You know the part where it says cut?
It's right here.
Where it says cut,
You know how it's, how, on the grills say cut along the dotted line?
you know, I have a quick, can I ask you a question?
A quick one, because we're about to start.
Quick
Yes.
one.
Very
Something
quickly.
just came up.
Yeah? Yeah?
Where do we get, Friday, Saturday,
Lucky number 7, now we need lucky number 10. Number 8's right here, with the wind blew it, I brought my car if you want
That's
to
a
ride back.
weekday service. And then
Only
it's
you
not a
would be a
weekday
glutton and
service.
punishment, walk the whole way.
So it's a completely different davening, and it has both Torah reading and also completely different content of the Amidah because it's not a weekday.
all right, so, which one?
So we do page 214.
214. All right,
Yeah.
what's your answer? 214.
Do I drink coffee? Yes, right now I'm drinking.
Okay.
Okay?
Alan, when you get all settled, would you like to lead us?
Right behind it is,
Oh, good.
What book do we?
I'll get you a tallis.
I'll get one right
Sure.
there. Sure.
Well, he wrote
This here.
his memoir, and then he wrote, he said people have to.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. I'm glad you read it. That's really a testimony of.
She's number 8, you gotta give her a firm, she's getting a ride back in a car so she doesn't get wet.
That is for sure, yeah.
Well, how much love can you get?
Yeah.
We have a car. Need a ride.
Thank you all very much.
Why, I have my wet umbrella on.
A
You
little
can
bit.
join my wet umbrella under the table, who cares? Bob, you know, you gotta watch out, he doesn't take your jacket.
And the boots, and the boots. You know, and the
After the
boots,
purse.
and the boots. Oh, I like your colorful boots.
Thank you. How many days a year can I possibly wear these, right?
See, we saw, we read.
This year it's a lot.
Read online that you were officiating tonight, we just rushed it.
So I just realized on my walk over that my parents, I mean, I knew my parents didn't have much money, but as I'm walking over and my boots are leaking, I'm thinking back to my childhood, like, who buys boots that aren't waterproof, right? Then I remember my parents putting my feet in plastic bags from
Same
bread.
page.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Like putting that over my shoes.
I
And
never
I'm
thought
like,
of that. That's a great idea.
it's a great idea. My parents were very resilient. Also means they didn't buy me rain boots.
Yeah, that's
Like
true.
both.
You know, I never got rain boots either. Imagine that this whole time in California, we never got rain boots.
Okay, we're going to begin with the optimism that we'll get a couple more people.
I can run around in the place. Oh my goodness.
We begin in Sidur Lev Shalem on page 214.
Ashrei Ashrei Beitecha Od Yalucha Selav Tila LeDavid Mincha Melech Hashimcha Lelam Vaed. Tehillat na'yada bepi, vivarecha bas Hashem kodshel elam va'ed, v'anachnu achiam et havyad olam, hallelujah. Uva l'tzion go'el, v'esha v'esha v'yobnu Adonai. אתה קדוש יושב תהילה ישראל, וגברת זהו זה והמהר.
Kadosh, kadosh,
קדוש,
kadosh,
קדוש,
Adonai
קדוש, הנצור
Tzevaot,
מלוך
melech
הארץ
haaretz
כבודו. ותישא עיני רוח ושמע חרק רעש גדול, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. תיתן אמר ליעקב חסד לאברהם, אשר נשבעת לאבותינו מימי קדם. ויבטחו בך ידי שמך, כי לא עזרת דרשך אדוני. אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר.
I'll check and see if we have our meeting coming.
This is being recorded, thank you.
I can tell a joke about Rabbi and a taxi driver.
Absolutely.
Not have our meeting coming. What's that? No, we do not have our meeting coming. So I will announce what we'll do next. So we do not have our minion coming on this rainy day. So we will have our Torah reader, who is Barry, who's going to chant for us from, you'll chant for us from the Chumash, or from your papers. We'll read along, we'll follow along from the Eitz Chaim Chumash, Parshat Va'era, which is the second parsha in the book of Shemot. You can find it on page 351. And we'll begin with the blessing. If I can borrow your siddur for a moment, we'll begin with the blessing la'asok b'divrei Torah. So you can come on up here, please, Barry, and that way you can be face to face with our friends who are with us online. Darn close, though. Okay, so. Okay, so it's the first two lines on this page that end in la, so b'divrei Torah. And let me turn this for you.
The first two lines you want me
Right,
to
so
do?
Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam asher kshem v'tzvah v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So
Oh, I do that for Mish's sake.
right, so 1 second, and let me turn this to you, and let me turn this also to you, so that our friends can see chanting.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'tzvah v'tzivanu l'asloch b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Now, are we doing blessings over this, or just go through it?
Just reading right away.
V'deber Elohim el Moshe v'yomer elav ani Adonai v'yira el Avraham v'el Isaac v'el Yaakov v'el Shaddai v'shmi Adonai lo natati lachem v'gam akimoti et briti itam latet lachem et eretz Canaan et eretz berechem asher garuvam וגם אני שמעתי נאקת בני ישראל אשר מצרים עם עבדים אותם ואזכור את בריתי. לכן אדמור לפני ישראל אני אדוני והוציא אתכם מתחת שפלות מצרים והבאתי אתכם מעבודתם וגאלתי אתכם בזרועות דיה משפטים גדולים ולקחתי אתכם לי לעם והייתי לכם לאלוהים וידעתם כי אני אדוני אלוהיכם המוציא אתכם מתחת שפלות מצרים והבאתי אתכם אל הארץ אשר נשאתי ידי לתת אותה לאברהם, ליצחק, ליעקב, ונתתי אותה לכם, מרשה אני אדוני. ודבר משה כנגד ישראל, ולא שמעו אל משה מקוצר רוח ומוועדה קשה. ודבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, בוא דבר פרעה מלך מצרים, וישלח את בני ישראל מארצם. ודבר משה לפני אדוני לאמור, הן בני ישראל לא שמעני אלי, ויהי שמעני פרעה, ואני ארע שפתיים. ודבר אדוני אל משה ואל אהרון, ויצווים בני ישראל ואל פרעה מלך מצרים להוציא את בני ישראל מארץ מצרים.
Yeshar Koach. Thank you for continuing the story of Moshe and the Israelites in Egypt for us, even if not from the scroll. Lovely to hear you're chanting it. We're going to continue now with actually a pause to offer that if there is anybody who is looking to have an El Male said first in the room, and then I'll ask those who are online, we are able to do that. We just don't do it with the scroll taken out. Is there anybody who is intending to have an El Male Rachamim said this week in honor of a yahrzeit that occurs in the immediate proximity to this Shabbat? If it was immediately preceding this week, yeah. Yeah. So why don't you come on up to the front and then we'll say Amale. Who's this for, Kathy? Oh. Sure. Okay, so I'll pause. First, we'll do it for your maternal grandmother, and then we'll pause for your grandmother. Hail Malay Rachamim, Shochein Bamaromim, Amanse Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Shechina, V'malos Kedoshim Adorim Kezahar Harakim Mazirim, Lenishmat. Your grandmother's name. Elisheva. Bati Yosef. She'alecha v'yolam ha'began heitan temenu chatan ha'balan rachamim hastiri ha'beseter knafecha lehulamim utzror b'tzorechim et nishmata Adonai hu nachlata v'tanuach v'shalom ha'mishkava v'nomar amen. We'll go right over to remembering your grandfather. El Mali Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzai Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, Malot Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Ragia Mazirim, Lenishmat Chaim Brooks, Shalach Leholamo, Began Heitan Tehei Menuchato, Anabal Harachamim, Hastir who is a jerkin of Echaleho, Damim, with Rabbi Tzrorachaim et Nishmato, Adonai hu nachlato, Vianu ach v'shalom al mishkavo, V'nomar amen. Are there any memories that you want to share of either of these particular grandparents that are coming to you today?
My grandmother lived with me, lived with us all my life, except for 1 year. She tried to go back to her own apartment. And it was, she wanted it, we didn't want it. But so I grew up with her learning about Ukraine. She lived in a small village, town along a river, and my younger daughter, Linda, actually got to go to the town when she went with Hadassah to Ukraine during Pesach. They had a square, and everybody met at the square after Shabbat, and the young people dance, and they learned Yiddish songs from her, and her love of cooking for her and my mom. Oh, I have a lot of recipes. and when I cook, I think of them. My grandfather is originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and they moved over here on Airdrome, where my dad came back from the war. My parents met, and we would come in from the valley every week and mostly, and hear his stories and be with them. And he took us to Echo Park with the boats, and so it was a good memories. Thank you.
Yehi Zichron Baruch. May your health and your own memory allow you to keep all those memories alive, both the ones of a grandmother who lived with you and could gift you with the stories. That's very sweet. And also, the proximity of somebody who gifted you with the life that you have, because this is where all that love blossomed also. So Yehi Zichron Baruch. There you also have. For your dad this week? Oh my gosh. Okay. Will you give me his name when I pause? Okay. Hail Malay Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanvei Shechina, B'malot Kedoshim Hutorim Kezohar, Rakim Azirim, Lenishmat. Nachum ben Sviari v'chayachana, shelach le'olamo, v'gan Eden tehei menuchato, hanaval harachamim, astireu b'seiter kenafecha le'olamim, utzror b'tzror chayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach v'shalom ha'mishkavo, v'nomar amen. Barry, is there a memory of your father you want to share?
My dad, Norman Rosenblatt, and as I go on in life, I see so much in my life that represents what his life. He was, first of all, an artist. He was a violinist. I'm an artist in different mode. But he supported the family by doing work and built a business. Very hard work. But at night, we could hear him practicing in the room. Bruch violin concerto, things of that nature, and he played in orchestras at night, daytime working. So similar. I'm an artist, but I do work. I've been work all my life, and I constantly think of him this way: that he was first of all an artist, loved his family, and did everything he could to support us.
Yehi Zichro Baruch. Barry, I hope that as you create, that those memories of him also being a creator, and not just a creator of you, but also a creator of beautiful things, continues to inspire you to create beautiful things. And we appreciate that you specifically create beautiful things for this community. I just was thinking of you this morning as yet another, I don't remember if it was a Kiddush cup or a pair of candlesticks was handed off to was handed off to our bat mitzvah this morning. So Yehi Zichro Baruch, and may his creative memory be for a blessing in you as well. I noticed that Marshall's hand is raised, so I'm hoping that Hector or someone online can help us out with that.
Okay.
Yeah, Marshall.
Yes. This is the 15th anniversary of my uncle Milton Kramer, the brother of my father. He died on the 21st of Tevet in 5768. And I'll recite the El Malay in his memory and just a brief recollection of Milton. El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamaromim. Hamsei Menucha Nechona. Let me just turn the volume down a little bit first. Second. Hopefully that'll be better, yes. El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamaromim. Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina. B'malot Kedoshim Utorim Kzohar Harakia Mashirim. L'nishmat Michal ben Shmuel v'Chana. Shehalach le'olamo. B'gan Eden Tehei Menuchato Ana Ba'al Harachamim. Hastirehu B'Seter Knafecha Le'olamim. u'tzror b'tzror chayim v'nishmato. Adonai hu nachalato v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo v'nomar amen. To speak about my Uncle Milton is a little bit difficult. The last time I really remembered seeing him for any extended period of time was when he and his wife, Diane, who actually died in December of this year, came to our wedding 53 years ago. He and Diane had moved to Florida, and we never really went to Florida to visit them. So it sort of reminds me of the statement, and I'm going to change the pronoun, alta azveni le'et zikna, kichlo kocheni alta azveni. How many of us have relatives who don't live close, who we have forgotten and never really been in contact with until it's too late? I said that Milton died 15 years ago, but really he was gone for 10 years before that with dementia. And I feel sort of sad that I wasn't able to be in contact with him by phone or anything, really for the last 25 years. And similarly for his wife, who just died in December, I would speak with her maybe once a year. And she was one who really embraced the wonderful quality of Jewish tradition of caring for one's beloved when they are stricken with dementia. And she did this for many, many years until he had to be taken into a special facility to be taken care of. So I can really say in the case of both of them, Zichronotehem Livracha, may their memory surely be for a blessing. And for those of us who have relatives who we haven't seen for a long time, make the call before it's too late.
Marshall, you're a very good rabbi for all of us. And it's good advice, as a few people are saying around the table. You're right. And while it's not a complete tikkun or tashlum to say an almale in his honor, you do certainly honor him in this way. So his memory is a blessing by your saying this. And we thank you for bringing him to mind, not just for yourself, but for all of us. And perhaps a phone call or two will come out of this. So there is good in this world through reminding us not to forget those who are out of sight and then sometimes out of mind. Anybody else, so that we don't miss anyone who has someone to remember today? Okay, well, even with all those folks to remember, we still don't quite have a minion in the room. One more lonely Jewish folk. I would go out to the street, but then I would come back. I would swim back, I think. Also, we would be out of time for Mincha Amidah, actually. We'd be out of the Zman. So I want to give us an opportunity to pray our Mincha Amidah individually. It can be found on page 223 in Lev Shalem or wherever you find the Mincha Amidah. Is that the right page number? Okay, good. And in Sim Shalom, Kathy and Barry, what page are we on? 234. It's recited individually. Customarily, we recite it while standing. If you're still praying your own private Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We're at the top of 230.
צדקתך צדק לעולם, ותורתך אמת, ביצעתך אלוהים, עד ממשה עשית גדולות, אלוהים מי כמוך, צדקתך כאל, משפטך תהום רבה, אדם ובהמה תושיע אדוני.
Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד.
Mourner's Kaddish is on 232.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה,
Amen.
בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, בחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום. עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
Amen. Huh. I don't know. Is there a blessing for when you find something that was lost? I know that there's the mitzvah. So Yeshar Koach to those who led us. So to Ellen for leading us in our Keachid prayers, and also to Barry for learning and chanting for us Va'era. We're going to take a little time to nourish ourselves. If you're at home, I hope you have a little time to nourish yourself, some tea, some goodies, some something. And then we will convene with a study of Parshat Va'era. I encourage you to have a chumash with you. If you don't have one in front of you already, I'm going to make some references to some parts of Shmot, of the book of Exodus, that we are not immediately in, and that I didn't include in the sheets for the sake of not chopping down any more trees. So I would encourage you to have a chumash in front of you as well, and we'll reconvene in several minutes. We'll give you time to get some white fish salad and fruit and all that. So I'll see you in a few minutes. בבקשות בעמידה בערב. את צריכה את הטלפון שלך. Not one, but we had a very long and healthy discussion. Shonda.
Rabbi Schultz's favorite. Say hi.
Onion, you need an onion, everything is number one. Onion number two. Bacon's number
The
three.
rye, I think. Hello. Oh, is that an onion? Is that a hidden onion? I think it is.
I think so too. I'm gonna
All right.
take it. Look at that.
Look at it. That is an onion. I'm sure. Look at that. Look at those onions.
Okay.
That's an onion. I knew you were coming. Well, that way yourself.
I just read a story today about
This is the problem though with.
a deathbed. Said you're a tree. So that was.
That's very funny.
I went
I
to
know
the
Every
top to
time you
check
have a
to make
printing,
sure
we're
that
gonna
it's
plant
not
a
in the
tree.
top.
Every time you have a large printing, we're gonna plant a tree.
I love that. Did they print a plaque in his memory?
What?
They print a plaque in his memory.
Fire command living outside of Florida. Whitefish salad, here we go. I think that would be Dave.
The third were, I think second or third.
I'm not really a fan. I'm trying to take a little bit of it for myself, but it's a new thing.
Got it.
I mean, I was vegan for many years. I went to this hospital today, but they didn't do it.
I have to remember to call Elon Spar after Shabbos because he has this whole thing about whitefish salad.
Still in Mexico?
They may have returned.
I'm in a car, I have an umbrella, I parked, I don't like parking in the garage, I parked over there. So I had to get a drop off. I wanna keep the good habits and try to work on the numerous bad ones. Cousin sent me a nice greeting card today. Did I call him? Good guy, he's retired already though. Dad. What?
Minus the rain.
Love the rain, right? He was good.
Today's better.
Got a
Monday
job,
is half
he was happy with. Never really found what he really wanted to do, but, his uncle's my rich uncle, so he just stopped working. Remember, when he was alive, saying my niece was married 10 years ago. He's younger than me. 10 years ago. 13 years old. My uncle, just told me about working, at least you're working, and even his systems, like I've said, people overrate work. Work is dangerous to your health. I don't mind the guy retiring. Spent money, he didn't need it.
You can do other things. You don't just not consider them.
Funny, you're doing a triathlete, the Ironman. Enjoying life. Some people know how to enjoy life. I have a friend who really knows how to enjoy life. My dad was on a very, he went on vacations, he did that. And, but he was sales and his job was really
Interesting. Okay. I think I'm gonna go for the matcha again.
He said sometimes there's a time to spend, and he did do some of that.
I just
I just think
finished
he enjoyed so much.
also like
Get the money, you left me
she
alone.
does.
Which one?
Kathy does art of tea. She does really good tea.
Market.
Kathy.
Not all that.
Yeah.
you're talking
I was a
really good
genius
tea.
till about 2 months ago. Casino. Apple quadrupled. So I figured money out that I
We were just talking about good teas because this is a vast improvement over.
Now,
It's still not ours too.
I'm using the money to do what I want to do. I just hired somebody. Came to the vigil. We started out with 30 people watching 250 miles. Yeah, it was
The next day it was.
350.
And so we started talking, so.
7,000 people with 5,000 young people. I said, we have a moment. We
If you try to stay caffeine free, Lipton doesn't do it.
No, that's too, right? That's also a problem.
She went to a vigil. She said, oh, we got graduated
Well,
college.
You know, I
She
discovered
organized
recently
schools.
casino.
Volunteer.
Amazing.
I don't want you waitressing.
So even bringing.
Then she got 30 people to show up.
Well, that's a good thing. Thank you.
Because 900 people in Instagram, 90% they want to be in a group, 30 showed up. Like, oh my God. I said, I don't want you doing any waitressing. I'm paying.
And when I say cafe, I mean.
I don't want you to pay me. I'd rather pay me. I'll put it on the 30 hours. Now she's organized 6 campuses, including UCLA. She's in a graphic artist. She makes a nice poster, stuffs it in Instagram. Tells people what we're doing. Because it's a climate is change. Oh, shit, I'm gonna start organizing out.
Well, I can certainly track it down, but I would also
Set up 25
buy from
congregations.
you, like, oh, sure, it sounds like, it's like for a year, I would buy.
That's we were gonna, I got some.
I get people who want to do something.
I would buy from you for the year.
See, in my industry,
Yeah, exactly, I would buy for the year.
the growers
There
are
a way
completely
that
controlled,
you can get, cause
completely controlled.
it's hoping started
Well,
library.
the growers are
Oh, we
completely
were getting.
controlled by the supermarket. Well,
Yeah,
Bob,
we-
and
oh,
you.
right,
you
so
see how
we're-
it-
so
you
we
know,
were
here
here
this
Because you
morning.
decide where you
I was
buy.
not here this
So this morning,
So my job is to get
the
Or
project
Bob's
that was
and the
posted
Allens.
last week inside,
In one
was
organized, because all I
downstairs,
need is
which is
10%
really
of their
nice,
customers.
library
And
unit
have
was
them
downstairs, the
Allens.
library unit still got more of it.
So
And then
people want
the
so,
kitchen
I
was
already
like,
have the
it's
vision,
much
which I'm
more
articulating to you, and I'm already seeing some interest for 50%. Bob is munching away and digesting it. You're already ready to join the barricade.
Right.
So
But I love
my
it.
job is to put the sign and the leaflets and tell you not to go there. Make a list of all your friends who shop there.
Get longer with
You go
it.
see the manager, because the manager makes
But sure
a
one.
base salary, and then he gets twice that. I think it was 85 grand average, and he gets another 85 grand if he keeps you as a steady customer.
And right now, with the focus.
So you'll get that manager to squeeze upstairs because it's affecting his bottom line. I get enough managers and enough stores, it can only be done by social media. When I joined the farm workers in 1975, there were 600 people like me working for Cesar Chavez for room and board at $10 a week. I did that for 15 years. In every major city. But anyway, now with paying people, I'm the only one for social media. So I need 2,500 support to me. You would do it, you would do it. So all I know is that we can connect. What? I know why, because Israel, you know what Israel is. I know. That's like saying I'm against the sun because you got a sunburn. Well, I didn't get a sunburn, except we're boycotting down farm workers. Okay. Well, I'm saying boycott, I'm saying talk to the manager. Tell him you want this. Please, you don't have to say boycott. I'm smart. If you can't answer, I'll get around it one way or another. I read you a mile away. 30% Republicans, 70% not.
I think we have a
It was
sheet with the different communities or something.
70% do not, but 30% do. What's your daughter up to these days? I'll make sure she's.
Everything was literally at the condition. So the way Troy was supposed to be quicker than. Yes, I did. Oh, just at that time, for some reason. The computer, so no one heard Rabbi Clifffield.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have it.
Were you in person?
Well, they'll recognize as much as they could.
All right, so your computer apparently
They put up a new link.
What?
They put up a new link, so people got theirs in the minute that they reported.
Maybe Zoom, but YouTube.
When I get from it, I'll tell you the most amazing thing about Rabbi Goodfellow's speech. He wrote that on Friday morning in 4 hours.
Wow.
Okay? To me, and the way that he wrote everything was so meduyak, so precise in what he was saying, and so balanced.
The first time I heard such
To
an
be able to write a speech like that in 4 hours was unbelievable.
Yes,
That was unbelievable.
yeah.
Yes. It was a middle of the road content, so it was.
The Zoom
We talked
saving a
about the
lot
two
of
sides
time.
and said what
It's
was going
amazing.
on, and
We couldn't make it, it was pouring, and
Yeah.
suddenly, wait a minute,
But
where's
you're not-
this?
Always have to shut up for
Okay, we are going to begin learning, so we have enough time to learn before we have to thank God for our nourishment and head out. I don't know who that is because something else is blocking on the screen, but I like this one as a newspaper. Hey, Gary. I feel like I want Gary to tell me the news, like keep me up to date. um, and we're gonna dive into a piece of Va'era from the very, very beginning of Va'era that, because of the way that the commentary goes, it kind of requires us to go back into this week's Parsha. And I've really gotten into Ibn Ezra this week. I spoke about Ibn Ezra last night, and I've gotten into this particular commentary by Ibn Ezra that you'll see we're going to land on at the end today. And it took me on a tour through some stuff from this week, which means that I've asked that you either have a Chumash in front of you, or I'll walk you through these pieces from elsewhere. So I'm going to pass these around. They're, for no particular reason, not stapled. So I'm just going to ask, as you pass them around, that you take 2 pages. I think that's right. And then pass them down. You'll see there's a giant title on the, if you take 2 pages, then you'll see there's a title on the next page. Okay. So there's a moment right at the beginning of Parshat Va'era when God is speaking to Moses. Is it the first time when God is speaking to Moses? Is this in Parshat Va'era, the second Parsha of the book of Shemot? Is it the first time that God is speaking to Moses?
No, you have the burning bush.
No, you have the burning bush, and God speaks to Moses there, which is partially why we have to go back a little bit in a few commentaries down the road. But there is a moment. Yes, Kathy.
But in that burning bush, does it say God spoke to Moses, or Moses heard Moses heard it and then they started talking?
Wonderful question. Does it say Vayomer Adonai or Vayomer Elohim? So in that moment, in chapter 3, you can already turn to it. In chapter 3, you'll see, this is where we're going to go. Chapter 3, you see on page 326, if you're in the Eitz Chaim, chapter 3, verse 1, begins where Moshe is tending the flock, right? And of Yitro, who is his father-in-law, right? And he comes to Chorev, which is Har Hashem. We know that. He doesn't know that, right? Har Elohim. Vayera malach Adonai elav. So an angel of God appears to him in a blazing fire in a sneh that was enenu ukal. It was not consumed by the blaze, right? And he says, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Why doesn't the bush burn? And then when God saw that he had turned aside to look, God actually called out, to Moshe, right? Vayikra elav Elohim mitoch hasnei vayomer Moshe. Moshe, what's that reminiscent of? Avraham. Avraham. There's also sneh in that one, right? When he calls out to Avraham in the moment of his nearly sacrificing his son Isaac. And Moshe says back, Vayomer Hineni. By the way, exactly the dialogue from that moment of near sacrifice, okay? Vayomer al ti krav halom shal na'alecha me'al raglecha. So don't get too close, but also take off your sandals. Rabbi Kligfeld actually spoke about that this morning. Ki hamakom asher ata omed alav admat kodesh hu, because you're standing on holy ground, sir. Right? He doesn't say sir. I added sir. Vayomer anochi Elohei avicha, and he says, so God introduces himself. I am the God of your fathers, plural. Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov. This is getting a little into what we're going to get into later, but yes, he does introduce himself to Moshe. He does say hi and introduce himself. It doesn't say Vaidaber Elohim El Moshe, but God is definitely talking to Moses, right? God says to Moses, I am the God of your fathers, right? So it's clear that God is talking to Moses there. He doesn't say the classic verse that we're getting to, but he does say, I am the God of your fathers. So we definitely have that. Okay, then we're going to go back to Parshat Va'era for a moment. Now we're back at the beginning of our Parsha. God spoke to Moses and says, Vaidaber Elohim el Moshe, Vayomer Elav, and he says to him, okay, now we get Vayomer Elav, and he says to him, Ani Adonai, I am Yud He Vav He, okay, I am Adonai, however that is pronounced. Va'era el Avraham, I appeared to Avraham, el Yitzchak, to Isaac, ve'el Yaakov, ve'el Shaddai. Be'el Shaddai. I appeared to them, Be'el Shaddai. What is Be'el Shaddai? What is Be'el Shaddai? That's what all of today is going to be about. Be'el Shaddai. I appeared to them, Be'el Shaddai. Ushmi Adonai. And my name is Adonai. Lo nodati lahem. What does that mean? Lo nodati lahem. I wasn't known to them, and the translation here was added, I wasn't known to them as Adonai. Some would say I wasn't known to them as Adonai. Some would say I wasn't known to them in El Shaddai, as El Shaddai. Who is El Shaddai? Let's figure this out. The Or HaChaim. So I'm bringing in this late commentary, this 18th century commentary. I'm bringing this late commentary who comes in and offers something really simple. I wanted to start with the very simple. So the very simple commentary that's brought here is God here wants to make clear that God introduces God's self to people, even special people of each generation, individually. Okay? Nobody gets the same introduction that someone else in a different generation got. So what does this commentary say? Ta'am shehiskiram bifratot. So the reason that God didn't lump them together, but referred to each one by names, is that he was known on something special, something unique to that patriarch who was in question. El Avraham, Abraham was unique in that he recognized his creator without having been guided to that particular moment, right? What is particular about Avraham, or Avram, as what he was when he met God? Midrash is that he destroyed the idols. Who told Abraham, you should believe in God? Right. No one told Abraham he should believe in God, or Avram he should believe in God. He just believed in God. He is. He's the founding father. I like that, right? He's the he's the patriarch who figured it out from the beginning, right? So if, or Chaim says, someone has foreknowledge of the existence of God and God's power, he doesn't get special credit for conducting themselves with such knowledge. So every intelligent being would choose good over evil once they know. Do we agree with that? I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do agree with the Resha, not the Seifa. Okay, with the first part, not the second part. I agree with the first part, which says Avraham should get special credit and should be listed separately, meaning what Or Chaim is picking apart here is, why does it say in this verse, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov? Or for that matter, why does it say in our prayer services, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov? Why bother saying that? Why bother saying, I introduced myself individually to each person? Well, because the relationship was entirely different to each of those individual people. I am not just the God of all Elohei Avicha. Remember, now you guys got the teaser. I was going to bring that in here, but you saw it earlier. He said, I am Anochi Elohei Avicha, right? That's what God said earlier at the bush. I am the God of your forefathers. But here God says, well, but let me get a little more specific. I was a God who met Abraham. And then later, I was a God who met Isaac, right? It's his reference sheet, as Irv says. It's like each time I met up with and created a special relationship with each of these forefathers. Who would you say, let's just get creative here for a second. Who feels missing from this list for you? I would say specifically Rivka for me. Specifically Rivka, because they definitely knew each other, right? She went to him and she was Lidroshat Hashem. She definitely knew God. We know that explicitly from the text. So just interesting who gets introduced in the text here in particular. Yeah. It's history rather than her story, says Irv. Yes, Kathy.
Can it also be that each time God met up with him, God's perspective was different?
Oh, I like this as well, right? So Kathy says, listen, God has changed every time God meets up with someone. God is like Shivim Panim LaTorah. There's 70 faces of God. God has so many evolving and changing aspects to God. Every time God meets with a human being, this is a little deep, right? But God is different in meeting up with that human being. So that connection is searingly different at each of those moments for God as well. I like that a lot. Barry, you're going to get the last point, and then I'm going to go to the next commentary. Each L is different, and it's the same God, but it's a different human. You're right. Right. No need to repeat the name of God every time, but rather we just repeat the different people with whom God has a relationship. That's beautiful. Sure, Sandra, you can jump in too. Mhm. Great question. Where does Kel Shaddai come in? Where does El Shaddai, this idea, come in? Where does it first appear? Where is this idea? The first place, at least where it appears in Shemot, is here. And I am going to make an argument, and you'll see where and when in just a few minutes, that I really hope that we get through in time. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. Why it's only important as to how God is referenced in Shemot. It's not my argument, it's a commentator's argument. I'm standing on the shoulders of someone else's argument, but this is the right, that El Shaddai. Speaking of that El Shaddai, turn the page to Sforno's commentary, our 15th century Italian friend, going back in time a little bit. And we're just going to look at the beginning of his commentary, who says, that bet, what the heck is that bet doing there? Okay. Ushmi Hashem, okay. My name is Hashem, Lo Nodati, didn't know me. look at the verse again. Right? So what? Yeah, Be'el Shaddai. So it says, and I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, Be'el Shaddai. So what is this Be? He says, the Bet, Be'el Shaddai, Nimshachat Letevat Ushmi. Tevat means either ark or word. Okay, so it is connected to this word Ushmi. So it's Be Shmi. So it's applying to the word Shmi. So it's like it's Be Shmi. So El Shaddai is the name. So El Shaddai, so it's, let me reread the verse with it. Va'era el Avraham, el Yitzchak, ve'el Yaakov, El Shaddai, Bishmi Adonai. So he's saying that it's not that the bet actually belongs there and it was put in the wrong place. He's saying he introduced them, God introduced God's self with the name El Shaddai, right, with that name, and that the bet is just sort of oddly placed in that place. And if, in effect, I'll read the translation just for this. We're going to run out of time so fast. In effect, what God is saying is that God has not made a point of becoming familiar to the patriarchs by God's attribute Hashem when appearing to them by Yud-He, Vav-He, such as in the example mentioned. The question is El Shaddai a place, or is El Shaddai a name? Is El Shaddai a place, or is El Shaddai a name? Be El Shaddai. If you were to ask me, by the way, this would also be a very easy scribal error. It could have been Ke El Shaddai, as El Shaddai. That's just me speaking as somebody who studied at the Jewish Theological Seminary. I haven't asked any of my professors about it, but as El Shaddai would make a whole lot of sense here as well. Yes. Mm-hmm. So when is El Shaddai used and when is Yud-He Vav-He used? We're going to get there in a commentary in just a minute. So when are each of these names used? Like, is El Shaddai used as a name? Is it not used as a name? Right? Is it a place? Does it show up as a place? How do we know? What are we basing this on? But clearly, Sforno is basing this on the notion that he thinks that it's a name, right? Bishmi El Shaddai. He thinks that it's Bishmi El Shaddai, but the bet is placed in an odd place in the sentence. Okay, go to Rabbeinu Bachya on Shemot on the 3rd chapter, which is not in Va'era. It's in this week's Parsha in Shemot. So go back to Shemot, chapter 3, verse 15, which is on page 320. $330. Okay, 330 and 331. Okay. So Rabbeinu Bachya says, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov. In this moment, when God says, you should tell the Israelites, Ehyeh sent me to you, because I am Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, I will be what I will be. And God said further to Moses, thus you shall say to the Israelites, El B'nai Yisrael, Adonai Elohei Avotechem, the God of your fathers, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Shalachani Alechem, Zeh Shemi Le'olam, V'zeh Zichri L'dor Dor. So this is my name forever, and this is my remembrance from generation to generation. So Rabbeinu Bachya says, this kind of a list, this is the list by which I will be known. I will be known by Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Velohei Yaakov. I will become known as the God of ancestors in a chain like this. Go to the end of the commentary, though. Another example, V'chein b'sefer Micha, V'eshlach lefanecha et Moshe, Aharon, uMiriam. Yet another example, Rabbeinu Bachya says, of the list of people who come. Why can God not be introduced, though? Why can God not say to Moshe, go to the Israelite people, to Bnei Israel, and say, I am the God of Moshe, Aharon, uMiriam? They have no idea. They have no experience at all. And actually, think about this for just a second. They have no recent connection whatsoever with Abraham, with Yitzchak, and with Yaakov.
They were passed on by all the ancestors. I think that's what the fellow always says, like begotten, like,
So Irv wants to believe that there is a lineage, and it's a strong one, and that generation that was enslaved down in Egypt, they were holding tight.
we still name our kids,
Right.
we still name their kids, so that I'm gonna see Yaakov tomorrow, not Yaakov.
Right.
Yaakov named after Yaakov.
Right. And I find that there's a reintroduction here that's happening that seems to be playing deeply on the fear, perhaps, that God has, that maybe you're right, Irv, and maybe I'm right. Like maybe it's true that they still absolutely have this connection to the notion that this is the God of their ancestors. Or maybe they're slaves down in Egypt and they are living the worst life possible and feel very distant from any God that they may have cried out to. Because at the bush, we've just heard, they've been crying out. Now, finally, their God has heard them. So God's saying to Moshe, go to them and say, this is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, your ancestors. I've heard your cry. It's a tough sell, right? It's a tough sell. Go ahead, Irv, yeah. We are honoring Martin Luther King Jr. on Monday.
Tradition, people would talk about the Exodus of the Jewish God. So if they're doing that, surely these folks, even though they're enslaved, have hope that there would be.
Great. I love that idea. Surely somewhere there was a kernel of hope if we know that in the enslaved tradition in the American South, which is much more recent history by comparison, by hundreds of years rather than thousands of years, that we know that there was memory of the biblically captured, no pun intended, story of Israelites, then surely there must have been a kernel of hope alive that this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob might come and to rescue them. Yeah.
It was in the New Testament also, in fact, when they brought the slaves to religion, they took out the page.
That's right. The page was often ripped out of Exodus when slave Bibles were given. Yeah, that's right. All right, Kathy, you get the last word, and then one more Rabbeinu Bachya and one last commentary.
Since Moses wasn't part of them,
Mhm.
the God he's going to talk about needs to be referenced back to the Jewish people. Otherwise, he might be saying, "Oh, you're just we're not going to follow an Egyptian God." So there needs to be some reference. And how did Moses know Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? Because now God tells him that.
Great point. How do we know that this God that you say, Moshe, by the way, Moshe, you Prince of Egypt, you, who has now married a Midianite princess in the wilderness, how do we know that this God whom you've met is our God, right? So it is actually, it's like an inversion of the zechut, of the merit that we call upon God. God saying, I am the God of Abraham and Isaac and of Jacob. I love that. Like God is calling upon us the way that we now utilize that as a signifier of merit. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, remember us. Right? And God is saying, remember me. I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I've heard your cry. Beautiful. I really like that. Did I get that right? I understand that. Great. We're actually going to go right to the last commentary so that we can get through this just in time. So the final commentary on the final page. Okay. My favorite Ibn Ezra I found, and I couldn't disagree with him more, but it's actually the reason why it's such a treasured commentary. Okay. So this is his take on El Shaddai. So now we're traveling back to the moment in Vaera where God speaks to Moses and says, just so you know, I revealed myself to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, Be El Shaddai. So Ibn Ezra says, maybe what this meant was as, because bet can mean bet can be taken to mean as an El, as a God, She, that is die, enough. And then he goes on to say that absolutely cannot be the case. God is never translated in such a way. It has to be adjectival. That's not a form that we read God's name in. And I thought to myself, Ibn Ezra, but that's such a great explanation. I love this explanation so much. We're going to read the verse in this way for a moment. Okay, so God spoke to Moses, Vaydaber Elohim el Moshe, Vayomer Elav. So God, Elohim spoke to Moshe, Vayomer Elav. He said to him, Ani Adonai, I am Yud He Vav He, Va'era, and I appeared to Abraham, El Yitzchak, Ve'el Yaakov, and also to Jacob. Be El Shaddai, as a God who was enough. Ushmi Yud He Vav He, and my name is Yud He Vav He. Lo nodati lahem. I wasn't quite known to them. I love this read so much, even if Ibn Ezra disagrees with his own read himself about what this could possibly be. And the reason why I love this is that, again, we're talking about a moment where God is, just to reach into a little bit of theology, we are talking about a moment where we are acknowledging a God who has permitted God's people, to descend for hundreds of years into slavery. So this is that God saying, I am a God who is enough and will be enough. And so it creates this air of wonderment about how there will be repair in that relationship now in this generation. How will they be known? Will God be El Shaddai in this generation? Will God be the God who is enough to this generation? It's not a name, it's a quality of God. God is El Shaddai. God will always be enough in every generation. It's an ask of trust and a very difficult one. Does anyone want to offer any thoughts on that notion before we close? Does that make you? Yeah.
Nobody want to hear what I'm going to say. I'm going to hold it. But there are different, I got two different ways to go on this. First, that just by the name of El Shaddai, doing that notricum is what Shaddai,
Yeah.
that way, is nice. But it's also, we learned in our Rashi class way back when, it was like there's no real
Right.
So you could also, some want to say it's Shaddai from Shaddai, that's a god of a woman's chesed, of mercy, rachamim, rachamim, rechem, womb is related to that, and Adonai is viewed as a sense of mercy, in other words, justice. Some say that El Shaddai may just be like more of a rock or a picture or something that's set. There are some other definitions as well, but there's nothing that's set. But what's interesting through all this is that we're told that he appears now as to Moses as Adonai. He didn't appear to those others before. But in fact, he did appear as Adonai in Bereshit. He does that. And Rabbi Klickfeld came up with the following. He said, well, it may be that, yes, they may have appeared, but they didn't fully experience his presence as Adonai, as a God of mercy. And it's not until that the Jews, Bnei Israel, are actually redeemed from Egypt that can say, yes, we now know Adonai as the God of mercy who is able to redeem.
So I'm not going to be able to repeat that word for word, but Alan, you're right. It is, first of all, a lovely idea of a notrakun, an idea of splitting a word so that you can create new meanings out of it. And second of all, it is such an oddity that God would say in the text that they didn't know God as Adonai, because of course they did. So how do we go about explaining, and I know the Rabbi Klickfeld has tried to explain in this such a way in Rashi class and other places, that perhaps they really didn't quite understand every one of God's qualities before. For me, and I think this is where I'll leave this off, and I think that this is a terrific place to leave this on Martin Luther King Jr. Day weekend. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day weekend. Lots of titles. God is only part of the equation. God is tapping Moshe as a prophet, but a very particular kind of prophet. As a prophet of, God is trying to turn Moshe into a nonviolent leader. It is a moment where God is taking Moshe, who killed a man in anger, and turn him into somebody who is lacking confidence and turn him into a confident, nonviolent leader of a people. And what I read this as is a commentary. And again, remember, Ibn Ezra doesn't like this read of the El Shaddai that he creates, but I do like it. I like the idea that God is enough in this situation. People play an enormous role. Right? God only plays so much of a role. The late great rabbi of VBS, I have brain fog right now. Rabbi Schulweis, thank you. Rabbi Schulweis, Rabbi Harold Schulweis, had a wonderful saying. He taught that there is no singular word in Hebrew for miracle. There's no one word. We have lots and lots. We have niflaot, we have nes, we have all sorts of words, and each of them represent different types of coming out of what would seemingly be impossible situations. The story of the Exodus of Egypt, which begins here with tremendous oppression, it does take the intervention of God, according to our text here, but it takes enormous human intervention as well. So what I take that read as is God is making a promise that God will be El Shaddai to the people. God will be enough to them in this story, and is making a promise that God has heard their cry, but the people will also have to play an enormous role in this as well. What's that? No, I'm glad you can sleep better at night with that explanation. We live in a world. Thomas Jefferson had a way of looking at the Bible, a deist Bible. I don't know if you know about this. Had a way of looking at the world. He really believed that God had made the world and then walked away, so to speak. Right? Really believed that. There are people who believe that God is completely non-interventionist in the world as it is today. And when I go back and I read the Exodus story, it's hard for me to go back into the world of playing with God being an interventionist in the world. But when I put myself in it, as I'm supposed to do as a Jew, and really read the Exodus story, putting myself in it, I do want to be there. I do want to remember that this Pesach. I want to believe that God will be El Shaddai. I do want to believe that there's just enough God, that there's just enough of whatever it is in the world that will help the human being leaders on this planet, that will nudge the unwilling but needed and talented leaders to step up as they need to step up, right? And so on and so forth. So may it be that we are in a world where we have a God who is El Shaddai, a God who might be admittedly fallible, as is the case in this story, and may we be open to new reads always of the story, because it's the only thing that keeps this interesting. So thanks for coming along for this ride today, and Bruchim Tihu. Let's bench. Who had some bread and can lead us in some benching for today? Okay. Alan Brody is going to lead us in some benching. If you'll lead us in Shir Hamalot and the invitational, that'd be great. And then we will do Mariv.
Shir hamalot v'shuv Adonai et shivat Zion ayinu kechomim az yemale schok binu ulshonenu rina az yomu v'agoyim higdel Adonai lasotim ele higdel Adonai lasotim anu hayinu semechim shuv Adonai et Shevitenu kavikim v'negev hazorim bedima berina yiksoru halor elehu vacho nosem esher hazara bo yavo verina nose alumotav. Page 49. Chaverai nevarech, Adon nevarech metav ve'ad olam, Yehi Shem Adon nevarech metav ve'ad olam, B'rshut harav, U'kolam b'subim kan, Nevarech shachanu mishalo, Baruch shachanu mishalo v'tuvachayinu, Baruch shachanu mishalo v'tuvachayinu, Baruch shemo. Baruch atah Adonai al haaretz, Baruch atah Adonai hazan et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai al haaretz ve'hamazon. Ritzeh v'chalitzeinu. Baruch atah Adonai boneh v'rachamav Yerushalayim. Amen. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
Okay, we do not have a minion in the room, which means that what we're going to do is do Ma'ariv Kiyachid as if we're individuals, but do it jointly so that we can end with Mourner's Kaddish. And that means that we begin Ma'ariv seated, and we begin on page 264 at the top. 150 in Sim Shalom. והוא רחום יכפר בם לא ישחיר ולהשיב פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו אדוני הושיע מלך יעננו ביום קורנו ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו בכל המשפטים אל חבר יום תמידים לא חלינו לעולם וברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרבים
Amen. Avat olam b'Yisrael.
יעבדך תשימנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל אל מלך נאמן שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ברוך שמו טוב ולבנו אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר עשיתי אתכם מארץ ישראל להלך אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם מלכות ברצון קיבל עליהם משה ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך בלים אדוני מי כמוך נטהר בקודש נוראתי לא תוסיף אלה מלכותך ראובנך בוקר לפני משה זה לי הנביא אמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כיפת אדוני את יעקב וגלה מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני כל ישראל השכיבנו אדוני אלינו לשלום ושמור צאתנו ואלינו לחיים ושלום יטפל עולם ברוך אתה אדוני שומר עמו ישראל לעד ברוך אדוני לעולם אמן ואמן ברוך אדוני כי המלכות שלך היא עולה תמלוך בכבוד כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו. The whispered private Amidah for the end of Shabbat begins on page 270 or wherever the Amidah for the evening begins in your Siddur. If you're using a Siddur where the evening Amidah 286 in the Siddur for Sim Shalom, if you're using the regular weekday, for example, 137, and you're using the Ma'ariv Amidah, don't forget to insert the special first paragraph on the inside of the Amidah for the end of Shabbat. Again, we're on page 270 in Lev Shalom. you haven't completed your own private Amidah, please take your time. Just a moment, we'll be in the middle of page 279, and you can be seated for a few minutes. Vino Hamadonai, Eloheinu Aleinu, Maseyadeinu, Korana Aleinu, Maseyadeinu, Koraneinu. Yikraini beinehu, imo hanochi b'tzara, achaletzehu v'yachbedehu, orech yamim hasvihu v'yerehu v'yeshuati, orech yamim hasviyehu v'yerehu v'yeshuati. In Mosidrim, we continue straight ahead. In Lev Shalem, we go back to page 216 to the second paragraph on the page. V'yeta kadosh Hashem teilot Yisrael l'karazel sev v'yamar kadosh 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 Adonai tzvo maloch la'aretz kavodo. V'tisayini ruach v'shmai hacharei korash kadosh baruch kavod Adonai mimekomo. Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed. V'yivtechu v'cha yiftei shemecha ki lo azavta toreshecha Adonai. Adonai chafetz leman tzidko yagdil Torah ve'yadir. We turn forward to Aleinu, page 281. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol. Hakatu v'torah Adonai yimloch le'olam v'yavademar v'haya Adonai l'melcha kol haaretz v'yoma hu yiheh Adonai yichadu shmo echad. Sandra, do you want to lead the Mourner Scottish? You can come forward because Shabbat's over. Yeah. Okay, just a moment. Mourner Scottish will be on page 282 in Lev Shalem.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash meraba, ve'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'olam le'omei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha b'richu. Le'ela Mikol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, damiran be'elma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Thanks to everybody who participated today. Thanks for being a part of our Minyan, whether you were here or online, so that we could say Mourner Scottish. Tomorrow morning, Minyan is at 8 a.m. Monday morning, in honor of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It is also at 8 a.m. We are going to do Havdalah. Close my book, of course. You can turn it off. It's fine. I can find the matchbox. Yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Yai nai 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 oh. Yai nai nai nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Hine el Yeshuaiti eftach v'lo echad. Ozi v'zimaratya, Adonai v'yihi li shua, Ushavtem mayim b'sason, V'maynei Yeshua, L'Adonai Yeshua, Halamecha v'yirchatecha selah, Adonai Tzivaot, Imanu, Miskav Lainu, Elohei Yaakov Selah, Adonai Tzivaot, Ashrei Adam Poteach B'av, Adonai Hoshia, Hamelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu, Yehudim Ha'itara, V'simcha v'tzatzon v'ikar, Kin diye lanu, Kos Yeshua Tesa, Hu v'shem Adonai ekra, Yainenai, 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 Savri, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu b'chol ha'amor, Peri ha'gafen, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu b'chol ha'amor, Minei v'samim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu b'chol ha'amor, Yorei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu b'chol ha'am, Hamavdil ben kodesh lecho, ben yor lecho, ben Yisrael ha'amim, ben yom ha'shvi'i l'shishim miyamaseh. Baruch atah Adonai Hamavdil ben kodesh lecho, Hamavdil ben kodesh lecho, Chatoteinu yimcho, Zareinu v'chasveinu v'be'arbechacho, V'hakochavim b'layla, Zareinu v'chasveinu yarbe'arbechacho, V'hakochavim b'layla. Shavua tov, 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 Shavua tov. Eliyahu hanavi, Eliyahu hatishvi, Eliyahu hagiladi, bimhira liyameinu, Yahavo eleinu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David. Shavua Tov, drive and walk safely, everybody.
Shabbat Tov. Heather was there for a while. Heather was there.
Yeah, she was there. So
I'm still here.
oh, hey, that's you.
I missed Mincha because I had a Zoom Shiva to go to. So I got here just on the food break, if that's when you looked before.
Mm.
But I got here in time for the food break and the study session in Maariv and Havdalah.
Okay.
Great. Well,
I missed it. I missed it. What was
I didn't quite hear you because there was some kind of feedback, but I was about to say, I think the two of us are the regulars now on Zoom.
I used to go every. I would go. I mean, I used to go every Saturday night evening to Havdalah. I mean, I went to the whole service. I went regularly, but now with the virus, I can't quite do it.
I couldn't quite hear. I don't know if you hear the feedback, but somehow I heard feedback.
Yeah.
But I have noticed, I hope that, I don't know if you can hear me or if there's feedback, but
Perfectly.
I hope that they keep up the Zoom for Saturday night and don't take it away the way they took it away Saturday morning.
Yeah, because I don't like the the live stream as much. And I lost the whole wrap about my speech was happening too.
Oh, and you know what? A few weeks ago, I disliked the live stream so much. I don't do it anymore. It just doesn't feel as if I'm part of it. But I was actually going to go now try to listen just to the recording with his speech because of the email we got giving us the heads up that he was making it.
Oh no, that was fine. We were not able to hear part of the speech, beginning part, because it just disappeared. Maybe they fixed it. Hopefully they did. Anyway, Voto.
Yes, Shavuot to you, because the thing is, it's just interesting. I see it's still recording, but it's public record. The only clergy member who signed that letter, the 2 weeks ago letter, the 3 weeks ago letter, was the intern Shay the Learner signed it. And I don't know.
And Robert, yeah, in the speech, it seemed like, I mean, the part that we were able to hear, it seemed like he wasn't in favor of it, so.
He didn't sign it. I mean, I know there are particular members who signed, but a member isn't committing the synagogue. But I'd like to hear, does the rabbinic intern somehow commit the synagogue? And I thought that was interesting because she's the one who's at HUC.
Right.
Maybe she's got an internship somewhere else too, but I was taken aback to see her name on that letter. Anyway, I'm going to go try to listen. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Have a good week. Bye-bye.